Hi, everybody. I'm sorry, I am now a headband person because my hair is unruly. Say hi to Zoe. I promised Vinny I would post the story because apparently he had never heard it. So when I was in college, I was actually a pre-med before I started my theater degree. And my junior year, I was in a genetics class. Now, one of the sort of quintessential genetics experiments is based on something that the scientist did back in the early 1900s where he bred Drosophila or fruit flies and tracked the genetic variants between different generations so that he could find out things about recessive and dominant genes and all that kind of stuff. So we had to breed fruit flies. Uh, and it was kind of chaos. So the way we had to do it is you had these tubes about this big full of live fruit flies, and you would feed them in that tube. And you had to sort them between male and female so that you could get the right flies into the right tube so that they would have babies. So what you had to do was there is actually a chemical called fly nap that is basically teeny tiny fly anesthesia. So you would put it on a little cloth and you'd put it on the tube and you had to wait for them to fall asleep. But because they're super itty bitty, their metabolism is really fast. So you had a very short amount of time. So you would spread these flies out on your microscope and you had to start sorting them, male and female, into little napping fly piles. And if you sighed or sneezed or whatever, your flies would just be blown across the table. And it was inevitable that you would lose a few because they would wake up and make their escape because you could never sort them fast enough. And unfortunately, one of their favorite places to escape to was the office across the hall from the lab we were in. And that office belonged to a man everybody referred to as Dr. Bob. And nearly every week, because this experiment lasted a couple of months, Dr. Bob would come in and start swearing up a storm about how there were flies in his coffee and we had to contain these flies better. I think maybe this had been happening for years and he was just fed up with the flies in his coffee. But we started getting more and more intense and we were sorting by phenotype as well as gender. If you don't remember your high school biology, phenotype is genetics that show up in physical appearance. So it'd be like whether you're blonde or brown haired, but with flies. So it was wing shape and color. And we were trying to breed for certain attributes. So we had to make this whole chart about how we were going to get to a specific type of fly. And so we started working on this. And a couple weeks later, I am sorting my flies. And I find one in there that shouldn't have happened in the breeding group that I had. It was showing recessive traits that weren't supposed to be within this breeding group, so I was a little confused. I'm not really going to go into the science of it because nobody cares. But I showed this fly to my professor, and she looked at it and she just looked at me and she was like, "What did you do?" And I had to be like, I have no idea. I put the flies in the tube and this is what happened. And she just looked at me again and she was like, "This fly should not be genetically possible. I don't know how this happened." And I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what grade to give you because this shouldn't have been possible. The only thing she could think of was that maybe another fly had accidentally got mixed in or something like that. But even then, it didn't really explain the traits that we were seeing. So that is kind of the story of how I created a Frankenfly. And Vinny made a good point about this fly being like out in existence. And I cannot remember for the life of me what we did with that fly. I can't remember if we put it to sleep or if we would just let it be. Um, so there may be like a mutant strain of fruit flies running rampant in Ripon, Wisconsin now because we didn't get rid of it. Uh, Obviously, it was probably a good thing that I didn't go into medicine, if that's the kind of thing that happened. But yeah, that's my fruit fly story. There's lots of other weird things we had to do in our science labs, but I will save those stories for later. Bye.